about to join Don Neuen, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio, and Denise Simon, host of the Denise Simon Experience, for a weekly situation report, or SITREP. 18 hours a day, Denise Simon lives her life as an Intel Analyst. 18 hours a day, Don Neuen lives his life in the world of rock and roll. 1 hour each day, Neuen receives a daily SITREP from Simon. Welcome to the Drive Time Situation Report. Fasten your seatbelt. You're now in Don Neuen's car, and he is calling in for his SITREP.
Hello?
What's up, Denise?
Hey, Mr. Don.
How you doing? Time for the Drive Time Sit Rep, Denise. But I got the boatload of people with me today because
Alrighty.
this is the weekly Sit Rep show, and my goodness, I could not wish for a better day for a Sit Rep after what happened last night in Singapore. Ladies and gentlemen, let me be the first to welcome you to tonight's Drive Time Situation Report with the ever-stellar Denise Simon, and my name is Don Neuen. The two of us are going to talk for the next 52 minutes. We're not going to have any commercial breaks, and I'm going to take you on my ride home from work after what has turned out to be an extraordinarily long and grueling day at the office. I've called in to Denise Simon to get my nightly sit rep from her, and we're going to get after it for 52 straight minutes. Denise, let's time stamp it and rock and roll.
All right, it is 9:23 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, I guess. Daylight or
Yep.
standard? I don't know. On the 12th of June, in the year of our Lord, 2018.
All right, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Now you know when this Drive Time Sit Rep was recorded. Denise, you have, I hope, been able to sift through all of the various information that has come out after last night's late night event in Singapore. Donna and I stayed up. Last thing I remember was about 4:30 a.m., and I couldn't stay up any longer. Had to get up and go to work the next morning, which was probably about the time you were getting up to start prepping for Scott James' show. What has happened today that you can share with both me and all of our beloved listeners that are riding home with me tonight?
Well, I never went to bed last night.
I didn't think you would.
I didn't. I don't think I went back to...
I caught you at the beginning of Matt Bruce when you first got into that, and then I jumped off of Matt and I kept watching what was going on.
Okay, well, I was busy, certainly trying to get all the background stuff. I got a copy of the menu and, all these, I got photos and of the media and, all those kinds of things. So it's always kind of fun to see what you can get necessarily in the background. But then we, of course, the top of the whole event was where Trump and Kim signed the statement of the meeting and where they go from here. It is not an agreement. It's an anticipation document, as I call it. But it's got 4 items in it, and that's good. Those 4 items have been items, Don, that have been in ongoing talks for, I don't know, years and decades, actually. I'm happiest, however, about, if for nothing else, the POW MIA piece that was in there. However, I'm disappointed because it did not include Japan. And Japan had flown, President Shinzo Abe had flown to the United States and specifically asked that to be included in whatever talks there were, so it should have been in the text. It should be known that there are an estimated 5,600 U.S. personnel classified as POW MIA in North Korea. I did not realize that number was as large as it was. However, there are 80,000 South Koreans. 80,000 South Koreans. So that component into itself is a huge number and a huge issue that I would say there should have been a team. As soon as that was agreed, I mean, the Pentagon should have had a team in Seoul waiting to go across that border into North Korea and start on the, because we think, interestingly enough, and poking around in between breaks in the middle of the night, we think we know where around 1,600 of them may be.
The South Koreans.
Of ours.
Okay.
The Pentagon's got quite the team. I haven't gone too deep into that side, but we do, in fact, have quite the team of people, forensic types, that do this kind of work wherever.
All right. Well, hold on a second, because the reason that I interjected that question, South Koreans, is that the comment that you had made, excuse me, immediately before 1,600 was referencing the 80,000 South Koreans.
Sorry.
Now,
No. 1,600.
Yeah. Right.
The Pentagon knows. They believe they know where 1,600 of the 5,600 Americans are.
Okay. Now,
Remarkable.
let me walk you back and ask you a couple of questions. The 80,000, estimated 80,000 South Koreans that are being held captive in North Korea, there was nothing in this 2-page or page and a half or page and a third document that was signed last night that mentions those 80,000 South Koreans being held, right?
Well, again, these are not being held. And some may be held, but the majority of them are as a result of the Korean conflict, so they're dead or MIA. Okay.
And I think we should assume that the majority of the U.S. and South Koreans that are in North Korea are probably deceased. Correct. Or will not be found, correct? Okay.
Well, I mean, we hope that some number will be found, but I mean, we have, something short of 6,000 families that, still need some kind of
closure. Yeah. The 1,600 that you referenced, the U.S. military, 1,600 that we seem to know where they are. Do we know where their remains are, or do we know where their breathing bodies are?
Remains.
Okay. So it's improbable that we will bring out live human beings that are Americans.
Correct.
Okay. And if we did, they'd be probably very elderly. They would have lived this long.
Well, I mean, they'd probably be certainly in their 60s or 70s, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the points that were brought up in this document are all previously discussed and, on the part of North Korea, previously ignored point with regard to the relationships between former presidents and administrations and the Kim regime ancestrally, correct?
Let me put it to you this way. It is a step in the right direction, okay, because the two previous administrations, U.S. administrations, had done nothing of any real consequence, and I would say Bush kind of did, but he was a little busy with a couple other conflicts, like with Afghanistan and Iraq. Obama wasn't conflicted with anything except he wanted, his own agreement with Iran, and he wanted to get us out of war. All right, so he really had the best opportunity to do anything with regard to North Korea, and he did nothing. He did less than zero. So having said that, the nuclear program in North Korea actually began in 1956. Did you realize that? Because the Soviets were actually starting back then to train North Korean scientists and engineers. 1956. That went on for 20 years. All right. So the program Genesis has Soviet fingerprints all over it. And the matter of where we are today, if we're told that North Korea's got 20 nuclear weapons, and then I heard last night they had 60. Well, I don't think they have 60. They might have 20. Nuclear weapon is one thing, but a deliverable nuclear weapon was something very different. And they had to have some kind of a missile in order to do that. And that is the component that I would say is got Iran's fingerprints all over it, China's fingerprints all over it, and Russia's fingerprints all over it. All right?
Right, which we've discussed countless times here.
Countless times. All right. There was an interesting, and I didn't realize this until I kind of poked around, but all of their missile launches, let me say that again. There were 26 missile launches during the Trump administration. The Trump administration, 26. Some were not as successful and others were. Now, what does that tell you? That tells you that China, and this is what it tells me, China, Iran, and Russia were really escalating the deliverable side of any kind of weapon. It could have been a germ weapon, a biological weapon, a chemical weapon, or a nuclear weapon. They had to have a deliverable. And they still obviously they have some issues with that because, he had altitude and he had some arc, but he didn't have re-entry abilities. So this, in my opinion, was a real test of rogue nations against the United States, and they were going to test Trump. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I got to tell you what else I think about that. This is not something that has taken place in the last year and a half. The majority of the work that was being done with regard to this, in my opinion, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, took place during the Obama years when he did less than zero.
That's what I just was saying to you. The missile, the deliverable part of any kind of weapon happened during the Obama administration. The testing and the launching happened when? In the first part of the Trump administration. You see what I'm getting at? Because it was... Yeah. All right. So this is... For Trump to put attention on Kim is fine, and I'm okay with that. But the real message, and I'm not convinced that I really heard any of it last night. But the real message needs to be to Iran, China, and Russia, because North Korea is being controlled. I mean, North Korea has virtually been annexed by a trifecta of daddies: Iran, China, and Russia. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, a little bit from Pakistan too, right?
Well, I mean, there's some of that because some of that was from the nuclear side, from a machinery standpoint, if you will, from a technology standpoint.
But I agree. The majority, the big three, are Iran, Russia, and China.
Okay, so we know that the country is essentially broke because, there have been sanctions and sanctions and sanctions and sanctions. So how does the country still live and exist as best as it does? And there are parts of it that, Pyongyang, it's pretty contemporary, but the rest of the country is not. But nonetheless, all kinds of illicit activities that generated revenue kept the regime financially alive. And the rest of the monies came from Iran, China, and Russia. See what I mean? So I think that from a signing statement or an anticipation agreement, if you will, that Kim and Trump signed, I think in my book it should have been a lot more comprehensive. There wasn't anything there except the POW MIA component that got me excited at all.
Why do you think that it was not?
I'm guessing that the United States doesn't want to reveal its full hand yet. Now that, and by the way, that signing statement, if you will, didn't get written, drafted, and finalized in Singapore. It was done. It's the same.
Oh, I know.
It was the same one that was done in April.
Well, and Trump had an interview with George Snugglepoulos in which Trump made the comment that he's actually spoken to Kim a couple of times. So they have been communicating. Pompeo, who I think is doing a very excellent job, has been extremely instrumental in what took place, as I would think Bolton was too. The thing is, you mentioned just a second ago that you don't think that we're hearing all of it, which quite frankly, I would be surprised if we were. What do you think is missing from what we're all hearing? Because, the left wing is touting this as an absolute victory for Kim and a failure for Trump.
I don't really see it's a victory for anybody, except for POWs, MIA, surviving families, if that happens. Does that shock you?
I thought you were going to continue, but so what do you think is being held? What do you think is being held to the vest? What don't we know? What do you think?
Well, China. Look, here's the big thing. We want, if we can do a formal, go from an armistice to a formal end termination of the police action, because that's really what it was, of the Korean War, let's do that. I don't understand why that wasn't signed yesterday. There was nothing that prohibits that except that the UN had to have representation there to have a signature, because South Korea never signed anything. We were there as under UN command, and we took over. So this was really a UN United States war in Korea. But then, who else were we fighting? Well, we were fighting some Chinese and we were fighting some Russians. You see what I'm saying? That should have been absolutely signed yesterday. That would have been a colossal victory. That would have been huge. And I haven't heard one person even speak to that topic, that was not a separate moment in time right there. Where we didn't bring in.
Here's the reason. Everybody but the Fox News channel was bashing Trump for the meeting, and the Fox News channel was doing nothing but cheerleading for Trump the entire night.
Correct.
So you have nothing objective being reported.
Correct. The other thing is, let's think about this seriously, Don. I can't think of one nation, not one, including really the United States, that wants a reunification of that peninsula. Not one. Sounds good in theory. It sounds like, unicorns and rainbows. But
it's not going to happen, though.
And nobody wants it to be. It's not going to happen because nobody wants it.
Right.
So,
no, go ahead.
Well, and so to even put into paper, on paper, where there are two signatures, Kim and Trump's, that there's a spirit of, peace and blah, 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 blah. Those things really need to be better defined. And they really weren't. North Korea, you stay North.
Overall, you give this what type of a rating in favor of Trump and what type of a rating in favor of Kim?
Kim had nothing to lose, and I don't think Trump did either, because Trump has gone into a a realm into a plateau that the Obama administration should really feel embarrassed about. And in fact, I would argue that the Obama administration, knowing what was going on in North Korea during his entire 8-year term, the Obama administration should have actually taken on North Korea before they took on Iran. You see what I'm saying?
They didn't take on Iran.
Well, I understand that. But, instead of going down the path of having some cockamamie, operation to have a joint comprehensive plan of action. It's a plan of action. It wasn't even an agreement. It's a plan of action. And this thing was, again, I call it an anticipation statement. But and if Obama and Kerry and Wendy Sherman and all the the European leadership, if they want to say that this was such a success, they could have used the exact same model with North Korea, because the two really can't be separated.
What was the reaction today from China, from Russia, and from Iran?
Well, this might. I actually wrote an article last week, and I think you and I had an offline conversation about this. That China was running some cyber vulnerability sweeps leading up to Singapore, and they must have been successful, because the day before yesterday, you had to watch kind of closely. But China's leadership made the statement in China, or to some Chinese media, that the United States was going to suspend war games with South Korea. Trump hadn't even announced it yet.
Yeah, but Kim knew about it, and Kim told China.
I don't think so.
I would bet dollars to donuts that that's what happened.
Well, apparently it has rattled the Pompeos and the rest of the envoy, because even Dana Perino, and she was the only one today that brought it up, that China knew about this in advance.
Yeah, but who's surprised at that, Denise? China owns Kim.
Well, they own hacking.
I get it. Now, they may have verified it through hacking, but I guarantee you they twisted his arm and said, all right, what's the deal about? And he knew what the deal was going to be about before he got there.
Yeah, but it wasn't, to suspend the war games wasn't in the signing statement.
Yeah, but it was discussed. I'm telling you, everything that was discussed, in my opinion, was pre-planned. You don't go into something like that, as the mainstream media has alluded to Trump, flying by the seat of your pants. None of that was flying by the seat of their pants.
We don't agree. We don't agree to that kind of thing. We just don't do that. Because the war games are not war games in cadence with Thailand, with Japan, and South Korea against North Korea exclusively. It's really a war game against China.
I agree.
Yeah, good.
But what I'm saying is the reason China knew about it was through Kim. That's what I think. Okay. But we can respectfully disagree.
I mean, I'm not denying that, but I'm just telling you that it wasn't even announced until Trump's press briefing at 4:00 yesterday afternoon in Singapore.
Announced to the public, but we don't know what Pompeo was discussing with Kim in April.
Well, we don't give up that kind of thing. We don't give it up. We don't agree.
So you think that Trump just blew off at the side of the hip and said, "Yeah, we're going to do this too"? I don't
know, but I will tell you that there may have been a discussion, but we don't say, "Okay, we'll do it." We don't even know, Don, if the meeting was still going to happen. Because remember, we had an envoy there 2 weeks ago for 5 days to meet with the North Koreans, and they never showed up.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole deal was off. So you don't agree to anything. You can put it on the table, but we don't go, okay, here's a handshake, we'll sign off, check this box, that's done. We don't do that. Or shouldn't.
All right, well, what's Iran saying about it? Because they've got to be voicing an opinion about this.
Yeah, Iran's just saying, ha, 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 we've just proven that you can't trust the United States. So, hey, North Korea and the rest of the world, don't trust the United States on this one either.
I figured that's what their response would be. What about Russia?
Russia's not saying anything. I haven't seen Russia say anything.
Really?
Except, hey, you guys can all come here and have a confab.
Yeah. Why do you think Kim was smiling so much more than Trump?
I think it was nervousness, to be honest with you. He was in a world that he hadn't been in before. Well, let's face it.
Exactly. It looked like he was at his first at-bat in the major leagues.
Yeah.
After skipping the minor leagues, coming right out of high school or college ball. He's never seen that kind of press ever.
No. But there's not to say that press, world press has not been in North Korea, because they have.
Not to that extent.
Greta Van Susteren has taken a press corps there. They had the press corps there when they blew up the nuclear test site.
How much of what we saw last night do you think the North Korean people, especially in Pyongyang, saw?
Pyongyang probably saw what the regime allowed them to see. Outside of Pyongyang, nobody saw anything.
Well, they don't have any electricity. But what do you think was filtered through that North Koreans in Pyongyang saw?
Well, I posted it, what the front pages would look like in Pyongyang, but then again, I can't read Korean, so I don't know what it said, except that, it was glowing for, Kim Jong-un. He was, great, wonderful, and, he's doing great things for the North Korean people. But so it was already on the
propaganda.
Yeah, but I can't read it.
Yeah.
But
Which you expect.
Yeah, I posted several things on Facebook yesterday as I was going through some things.
Give me your take away from this as the next move that the U.S. will make.
Well, now that's where I have an issue, and when I was on Matt Bruce's show last night, I even asked, if there's anybody out there smarter than me, I need some help with this, because I don't know what the exact sequence should be. All right,
hold on. Did anybody call in when you asked that question on Matt? All right, well, there you go. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no one more intelligent than Denise Simon. We need to let you all know that. The proof in the pudding is that earlier this morning, probably around 3 a.m., Denise Simon shouted out over the mass airwaves of the Salem Radio Network, if there is anyone out there smarter than me, call in. And no one on the planet, Denise, no one called in. That means, and I'm sure that everyone listening to this show will agree with me, that you are the most intelligent person on the planet.
Stop it.
But who's your favorite talk radio show host?
Don Neuen.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, please, you have to take a moment and savor the unbelievable intelligence and talent that you have on this one radio station. With Denise Simon, you have the most intelligent person on the planet. It was proven last night, early this morning, on Matt Bruce's show. The second thing is the most intelligent person on the planet has just told you who her favorite talk radio show host is, and that's Don Neuen. It doesn't get any better than this, Denise. Don't you agree?
I absolutely agree.
All right, well, hold on a second, Nisi. Let me tell, while we're blowing smoke up your butt here, ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you to go visit Denise's website. She has mentioned it a couple of times tonight. The website address is founderscode.com. Founder with an S, founderscode.com. Go to that website. That's her personal site. It's where she posts all of her articles. You can put your email address in a little window and submit your email address. Once you do that, you're going to get an email sent to your inbox every time Denise posts an article. You can save it, read it at your leisure. The most important thing, though, is that you understand that you're going to be getting well-vetted, extremely accurate, tested, verified information that you then can repost. You can discuss it with your friends and family. You can quote from it if you need to, but you can do all of that with high integrity, unlike many of the articles and the repostings that I see in social media that are absolutely comical and embarrassing when I see a fellow conservative or Republican repost and like and do all this other stuff. There's too much fake BS out there. Denise Simon delivers every time she writes an article. Founderscode.com. All right, Denise, back to you.
Well, thank you for all that.
Yeah,
but the
anytime.
question was what the next step is, and the sequence of that is, it kind of eludes me. I don't know what necessarily can come first or second, or if there are things that can be done, concurrently. I would say, as I mentioned at the top of the show, that I would have already had a team from the Pentagon forensics department, if you will, that was sitting in Seoul, that was ready to walk across, the border and go right then and there and start their work with the POW MIA recovery. That can run concurrent, so I would have done that like immediately. Again, I would have taken it from the next step, perhaps from the armistice to this war is terminated officially and of right now. There are a lot of trigger points that go with that. And so do we turn around and now call up Los Alamos and Oak Ridge Laboratories and say, okay, you guys tell us everything that we need to put on a piece of paper, what we need to demand that North Korea cough up. And then we go to North Korea and say, hey, North Korea, give us a list of all of your germ sites, your buildings, your missile sites, your fuel rods, your centrifuges, everything, and start, give us a list of everything that you have. And then we compare it with what Los Alamos and Oak Ridge has so that we can automatically see what we know that they're supposed to have, and they didn't reveal it, they didn't disclose it, so then we know right then and there that all bets are off. You see what I'm saying? That would be the first lie. That would be the first head fake. I would also put some other offensive equipment. We already have some in South Korea, but I would put some in Japan. I would go ahead and make a list of other front companies, Chinese, North Korean, that are operating elsewhere in the world, and I would go ahead and apply those sanctions right now, immediately. Because we're going to have to prod, we would have to prod all this along. Because the longer this drags out, Don, I would say then Kim regime wins and China wins. Now, apparently, Pompeo has another team that will be in South Korea next week. What that team is going to do, I do not know. He also has to make a stop off in the Middle East to kind of discuss some things with Israel and what's going on in Gaza over there. But see, there's so many other moving parts that necessarily need to happen here. we should probably be making some demands that we want this building, to be shuttered. We're coming in there with some equipment. We're going to start removing this. We're going to, you know what I mean? So whatever that sequence is, we may be, the arms control people may be doing all that right now. For all I know, I can't speak to that. But
well, I would very much like to think that they are.
I would too.
Pompeo mentioned that he's had, in rebuttal to the media's claim that Trump is going in here ill-prepared and as a Bush League amateur, Pompeo countered that with,
yes, he did.
You're wrong. And I thought he did a very good job of countering that, didn't you?
I would have said, the New York Times actually did that article, and he called them out specifically. I would have said it was offensive, because that tells you that anybody at the Pentagon, anybody at Los Alamos, anybody at Oak Ridge, anybody at the IAEA, or at the State Department has virtually no brains and has not had any kind of interaction or intersected in any way in all things North Korea. That's offensive.
Well, the New York Times is offensive, and I'm sure everybody listening will agree to that. Hey, Denise, on a sidebar note, can you do a little research for me? Donna and I were talking the other day about her friend James Rosen that used to be at the Fox News channel. And for those of you that don't remember, he was targeted, as were his parents, by the Obama administration, in which they surveilled both him and his parents. But James has gone to work for the New York Times. And Donna and I are a little miffed as to why he would have done that. We're hoping that he's not a closet liberal and just simply is reacting to a potential higher pay grade. Don't know what happened to him at Fox, but he and Donna were friends at Fox, and we're curious as to what happened. And she doesn't have any way of getting in touch with him right now. So if you don't mind, when you're trying to figure out what to do with yourself, can you dig into that and see if you can find out the real reason he's at the New York Times?
I don't believe that he is.
That's what she said.
I think she's thinking about James Ricin and not James Rosen.
Ah, very well could be. Where's Rosen? Is he still? He's not still at Fox, is he?
No, he's gone.
Yeah, but where is he? He didn't spontaneously combust.
No, I don't know that he's anywhere. I'm not seeing that he's anywhere. In fact, I looked that up about a month or so ago. He has been known to write books, and I think that's probably what he's doing.
Well, let's hope so. I think that would make Donna feel a whole lot better. And Donna, I know you're listening, so it might be James Ricin and not James Rosen that's at the New York Times. So thank you, Denise. That should make her feel much better. All right, so can you brief me a little bit on Jared Kushner and his envoy that's going over to Israel to meet with Egypt and Saudi Arabia about a potential peace agreement there?
Which I think is what Pompeo is part of as well, trying to, get, whatever work has been done to date, I think has somewhat been idolized, meaning idled or kind of set aside because of the nonsense with the Palestinians in Gaza. And so they've got to come to, some kind of an accommodation on what they're going to do there. And, if that has anything to do with monies or, the United Nations or any of these other kinds of things, I don't know. So I can't speak to it anything more than that.
Okay. What should be done about Turkey? Because in my opinion, they're becoming an absolute boil on the planet.
Well, they've been one, but right now he's gone after Australia because Australia wants to close a couple of mosques, and so
yeah.
Right now, let him deal with that.
Yeah, but the bottom line is, what position should we take with Turkey?
Well, until things, we can't really, because we need Turkey, sadly so, just like we need Pakistan, sadly so, for things that are going on in Syria. That is clearly not a finished product by a long stretch. So I don't know. I would hate to sit on the turkey desk at the State Department, and I'd hate to sit on the turkey desk at CIA. It would be a thankless job, and the same goes with Pakistan.
All right. Here's a curveball for you. Can you hit me with a Project Cassandra update?
There isn't one.
Holy moly, Denise. I just all of a sudden drove into torrential downpours. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a drive time situation weather update report. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Denise, we've got massive rain that has all of a sudden hit the car. Can you hear it in the background?
No.
Well, believe me, it's intense. You know, if some of my esteemed colleagues like Rick Leventhal, William Lajeunesse, and that guy that looks like an unkept bed down on South Beach, you know, they report in weather like this, Denise. You know what I'm talking about?
I do have some breaking news, however.
Lay it on me.
Well, we know that we have this. Oh gosh, now I've forgotten the name of it, with Jeff Denham, the congressman out of California, and William Hurd, that want to have, I think they are 4 signatures short for bringing these 4 bills to the House floor to vote on. And that they had to have those other signatures, I think, by 9 o'clock tonight, but they extended it, I think, until midnight. They don't have those signatures.
Wait a minute. What bills? The 4 bills. What 4 bills?
Let me, Will Hurd, let me, it's like a petition.
All right, well, while you're digging that up, I'm going to remind the listeners, those of you that have tuned in late to the show, what you're listening to and why you're hearing rain and road noise and everything like that. This is the Drive Time Situation Report. It's a recorded conversation between Denise Simon, host of the Denise Simon Experience, and myself, Don Neuen, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio. I'm driving home in my personal car, talking to you lovely people via my iPhone. Denise is in her bunker in Central Florida, and we try, sometimes we get a little busy, but I try on a nightly basis to give Denise a call to get a SITREP of what's been going on, because 18 hours a day she spends in the world as an intelligence analyst, and I spend it in the world of rock and roll. So by the time I leave work at 9 o'clock at night, I don't really know what's happened. I haven't had time to check social media, don't watch the Drudge Report, and don't have TV in front of me during the day. So I count on my dear sister from another mister, Denise Simon, to help me out and bring me up to speed on what's been going on. And for the better part of 5 or 6 years, she's done just that, and I cannot express how grateful I am. Once a week, we record that conversation, and that's what you're listening to right now. I am on Highway 61, Denise, headed south into the lovely city of Carrollton, Georgia. Been on the phone with you for about, 40-something minutes now. Got another 9 minutes left. Did you find the information on those bills?
Yeah, I did. It's called a discharge petition, and the leaders of that was 2 Republicans, and I would say quite moderate. One from California, Jeff Denham, the other Will Hurd from Texas. And they needed 4 more signatures to do this discharge petition to force a vote on 4 pieces of legislation to the House floor. One of them has to obviously do with the DACA bill. And so those, by rule or whatever, the signatures had to be, all of them had to be gathered by tonight to have enough of the discharge petition, which was 218 signatures. I think they were 4 short. I think they're extending that until midnight tonight. One of the signatures, interestingly enough, is from now a former congressman. And they can't remove his name until, his replacement or, something or other can remove it. But House Republicans have announced, because they're the conservative side, meaning the Mark Meadows and the Raul Labradors and the Jim Jordan crowd, they will vote next week on 2 immigration bills to deal with the Dreamers and that face deportation. And what they're necessarily trying to do is stop the immigration discharge petition. So that was announced. One of the proposals that the House will take up is the Goodlatte bill. The Goodlatte bill is pretty good. There's still some holes in it that I'm not happy about, but it's the best we've got so far. Why we can't seem to have, some robust one, I don't know. But in the meantime, Jeff Sessions has done something pretty interesting, because he yesterday...
Wait a minute. You mean you found Jeff Sessions? You found him?
He came out yesterday.
Wait a minute. We've had a bolo out for Jeff Sessions now for a number of weeks. You found Jeff Sessions. Where did you find him? Back to you, Denise.
He was on Tucker Carlson's show tonight, too. But
Well, I just told you I don't watch TV until, I'm probably going to get home here at about 10:30, Denise.
well, I'm just telling you, he's around because he was on Tucker's show.
All right, so what's Jeff been doing?
Well, what he's done an interesting thing, and that is that he has redefined or reasserted the definition of asylum. And those that come here just because they got in a fight with their husbands or their families, or, that there's some ridiculous kind of reason that they feel like they're leaving their country to come to the United States, we ain't taking them. We only are taking them because of full-blown persecution over race or religion or, political position. But any of these other...
So let me ask you this. Why are we not bringing in people from South Africa?
Right.
Okay. Well, maybe Jeff Sessions will do something about that country.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Wouldn't it be nice, though?
Well, that to me is not a Jeff Sessions problem. That's really a State Department problem.
No, I agree with you on that. But you know my point.
I do. So, this is where we are with that. In the meantime, Andrew McCabe has filed his official lawsuit about 5 or 6 o'clock tonight to sue the FBI and the Department of Justice. Wrongful termination. But they're also not, he has, the reason that he's doing this is because he wants some documents, and nobody's coughing up documents for him. So, that's part of discovery.
What documents does he want? What's he want?
Discovery. He wants, to understand what the documents were that caused his firing. We know that from the Inspector General's report last year, but beyond that, what other documents were not included or should have been included as an annex to the Inspector General report. And the FBI and the Department of Justice are not coughing up those documents, which he's really kind of allowed under discovery, if you will. But nonetheless,
absolutely.
Nonetheless,
he's got to file. He's got to file the lawsuit under discovery, does he not?
Well, he's done
in order to be. Okay.
He was requesting, I think, things under FOIA, and they weren't coughing those up.
Okay. Well, they don't always do that anyway. Just ask our buddy over at Judicial Watch. All right, Nisa, you got about 3 minutes. Any bombshells that you think are going to come out of this next IG report? And when is it coming out?
Next week. So we're all, in big anticipation of that. And apparently, I don't get excited about these things anymore because I feel like maybe there's the smoking gun that will cause some people to go serve some prison time, but it never seems to happen. But
the only thing you get excited about is Wimbledon and the U.S. Open.
Well, here's another one that I'll close with. Washington State. We had a very interesting thing happen that nobody seems to be reporting, but at 4 o'clock in the morning over Whidbey Island, where we have a naval air station, there was an object that went up into the air. Looks very much like a missile, and this object was done by a weather camera that was part of the atmospheric sciences at the University of Washington. And so then they went directly over to our Naval Basic Kitsap and said, "Hey, did you launch anything?" And they went, "No, we don't do that here." So nobody's talking about it. We have another myth. So I would say we have some interesting things that are happening underwater because I don't think it was a land-based launch of something. I think it came from something underwater, personally.
And you think it's one of our missiles, correct?
I don't personally. I think,
you think it's Russians?
I don't know whose it is, but it isn't ours. But it for sure looks like some kind of a missile. And the only people that reported this was MSN.
That's interesting.
All
right, ladies and gentlemen, we're out of time on this week's Drive Time SITREP. We sure do appreciate the fact that you have joined us tonight. We appreciate the fact that you give us 52 minutes of your personal time, your valuable personal time every week. And we sure hope that you never think for 1 microsecond of those 52 minutes that we waste your time. We are indebted to you. We appreciate the fact that you join us, that you support us, that you tell your friends about us. And thank you. We do this for you. Denise, take us home. We got to go.
Okay. Thanks for being with us, and God bless America.